This podcast is brought to you by Civic Plus. For all of our park and recreation pros, do you feel like you're constantly putting out fires? Registrations, facility bookings, team calendars, it's a nonstop juggling act. And all that admin work keeps you from what really matters, serving your community. That is where Civic Plus comes in. Their comprehensive parks and recreation management solution streamlines everything. From online registration to facility scheduling and payments, all in one place. Parks and Recreation Management by Civic Plus automates the busy work that bogs you down, so you can spend less time on paperwork and more time creating unforgettable programs for your residents. Civic Plus is the trusted partner for thousands of high-performing civic leaders, helping them balance better services with limited resources. With over 25 years of experience and a team of 900 experts, Civic Plus powers over 10,000 organizations and touches 350 million lives every day. So if you're ready to train that bird out for impact, visit civicplus.com. The best run local governments run on Civic Plus technology.
Welcome to Season 5 of RecLess, the podcast making you smarter and more knowledgeable about the field of parks and recreation. Your hosts are Shane Mize, Jay Tryon, and Tom Venniro, three career-long friends from across the country bringing you a surprise guest each episode. Listen in on a great conversation, maybe take some notes, and definitely enjoy a couple of laughs. This is RecLess.
You still beat Jay.
I was gonna say my apologies to high altitude, but I'm really relieved to see that Jay's not in here.
No shocker, honestly.
Now I'm out of breath.
Oh, here comes Jay. See how salty he is when he comes in.
You never told me to come in. It's always our fault.
What's up?
What's up, guys?
How you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, buddy. Everything going all right?
Yeah.
How was the vacation? Coming back from vacation sucks, though, doesn't it?
We weren't gone long enough to make it be bad. You know what I mean? I was only off for 2 days.
Oh,
so
okay.
that's
Just Thursday
bad.
and Friday, or Friday and Monday?
Thursday and Friday. So, but it was awesome. Fantastic trip. We were busy, but it was really good.
Well, fellas, I guess you ready? Welcome to RecLess, everybody. Was that too loud, Tom?
No, that was perfect. That was really great.
Sweet.
I was
Welcome
about
to
to
RecLess.
interrupt. A lot of energy.
My name's Shane. Tom and Jay, I'm halfway through my first monster. Only my first of the day. You ought to be proud of me. So that's where the pep in the step is.
And it's only 9:30. Or what is it? Oh, it's 10:30. Okay.
No, it's 11:40, something like that. Oh. What's up, fellas? How's it going?
Good.
It is good, man.
Summer madness is upon us anyway.
Yeah. We're in week 3 of camp here, so it's been going on for a couple weeks.
Yeah, we are too. We just wrapped up week 3, which is weird to say because this is episode 1 of season 5. Unless we get our schedule off, then we apologize later in the fall. Excited to be back. Excited for season 5. Excited for our guest. High altitude. Any guesses already? Are they rock climbers that like to get high? Do you think that's what it is, or
Could be Tom
helicopter
Cruise.
pilots that get
Who
high?
knows?
Okay, could be anyone. Well, before we get to old high altitude, we've got our normal question, and I'm excited to hear what y'all have to say about this. Part of this question reminds me of our guest. For me, it's going to be a 2-parter as far as my answer, and I'll give you a second to think about yours. But there's got to be something not Parks and Rec related that you wish we did in Parks and Rec. And I know that's pretty broad, so I'll explain a little bit. So for me, I think a lot of 2 things. One, NFL films, the Football Life. Have you ever seen one of those? They're incredible.
Yeah, good show.
I would love to watch That Football Life on Linda Katowski, you know what I mean, on Jane Addams, someone that we have a lot of respect for, and just see them interview those people and see how they talked about their journey. Hear the other ladies in the Red Coat Society giving the man the business from Linda back in the day or whatever it was, right? So I would love to see, and I know it's tough. It's costs a lot to produce, and they fly all around, and you wouldn't have the NFL films library that we obviously would have for Tom Brady's football life someday, for example. But I would love to see something like that. The second thing I think of, and y'all know I like to watch YouTube and do research. Some of the times that I'm on it, I find some different stuff. One of the things I find is a channel called Wired. Have any of y'all ever heard of Wired?
Mhm.
No? Maybe?
I know there's a Wired magazine on like
I don't
IT
I don't
stuff.
I don't know if it's the same. I'll be
Okay.
honest. But well, you know what? I bet it is.
Okay.
Because what I like about the Wired channel is they have a segment or a playlist or a sub channel or whatever called IT support. So I think it probably is. But what they do is they bring in different people from different parts of the world to talk. So if you go to Wired right now and check, I think the most recent one's a landscape architect. So he's going to come in and it's an AMA, it's an Ask Me Anything type thing where he answers people's questions about what dirt do you use and what time of the year, whatever. And for those people that are interested in that thing, it's very interesting. One of my favorites is the guy they've brought back a couple times. He's the urban planner for the city of New York. And he just gets answered random questions and he answers them in such an incredible way. And as someone that works in cities and enjoys the growth of what a city looks like, knowing that parks works into all those things, but has to work in with streets and roads and infrastructure, it's fascinating to me to hear him talk about, can we turn more industrial buildings into apartment complexes? And he says, yes, you can, but here are the drawbacks or here are the limitations. You're like, oh, I've never heard anyone explain it in such a way that makes it very easy for me to understand. So I wish NRPA was able to do that in some way, bring on someone that would be outside of our thing. And it'd be a little nichey and mostly it'd be NRPA people watching it. And I wish NRPA in some way could do a football life because I would love, we've heard of Robert Crawford. There's a book about Robert Crawford, but I learned best from an hour-long special where you got to learn about Robert Crawford. I would watch that in a heartbeat. So those are two things that would probably be tough to replicate, but happen outside of the Parks and Rec world. I'd love to see happen in the Park and Rec world.
Well, I guess, Jay, if you're still formulating, I'll say that what came to mind for me, I see it done in Parks and Rec, but I don't see it done
Well,
globally.
oh,
Well might not, maybe well, I'm sure some people do it well, but I would say globally, and that is, well, so I'm gonna, I guess, go on the avenue of municipal parks and rec, right? So there's obviously so many different types of parks and recreation, but we obviously come from the background of municipal. When I think about our department and I compare it to all the other departments, whatever that might be, clerks, building,
mhm.
highway, right? All of those all feel like government. They all feel like government. But when I think about Parks and Rec, when we're selling our product to a community, it just doesn't feel like government, right? So it's a different place. It's the happy place. It's where the good news happens, where the people go to get away from it all, whatever it is, right? That's the why we do what we do to provide those experiences. So I almost wish we were able to, in the municipal sector, treat it more like a privatized business. If we had a little bit more rules or leeway that we could treat Parks and Rec almost like it's its own entity and business. And perhaps the park districts have a little bit of that, even though they have kind of a park board. But if you're not a park district and you're answering to an entire whatever it is, city, town, county, you really have to obviously treat it a lot like it is. It is what it is. It's a government. And I wish that we would maybe pull ourselves back a little bit from that a little bit better. And that's all going to be very different depending on who your elected officials are. So Shane, good example is you guys have that really nice project coming up where you're going to be partnering with privatization, right? You're going to
Yep.
have business district in there.
Yep.
I see, what we talked about with with our last guest, which was John Prue and Bunny Allen. Yeah, it's not necessarily privatized, but they're partnering a ton. It almost feels like it is privatized. They're running their own movie theaters, right? They're running
Yeah.
their own resort centers. Carmel Clay as a district, right? So I get that. It's a little unique. They have a water park. And then I think about it from a perspective of trends. And Shane, I think you all do it well, where you're able to do what you see out there that some of the best private businesses are able to do, whether it's from a marketing standpoint or a fee structure, a pricing standpoint. So I wish we could have that feel a little bit more in that municipal park and rec realm, if that makes sense or resonates with you all at all.
I think you see Noons doing a lot of it with his
Yep,
stuff, or
absolutely.
Grand Prairie's done some of it with like they built a water park, but it's run by a third party and the Epic Waters or whatever. But yeah, we don't see it a lot in our section of the world, do we?
Well, and I was just thinking, kind of when you started talking, Tom, I didn't think about this when Shane first asked it, but I almost thought you were going this direction. But I almost wish sometimes, and it's not all the time, because it's not that big of a deal, but I feel like sometimes it gets played up more than other times. I wish we could eliminate some of the stereotypes of what it is to work in park and recreation. And I know we've all heard the stories, or maybe you both have lived the stories of, 15, 20 years ago when you first, maybe whether it was told a family member or told someone like, hey, I'm pursuing this. And there's always that like, oh, so you're just going to play and throw balls out in a gym all day. Obviously, we've talked about that, not necessarily on this show, but with people in general that have gone through that. And then there's always the jokes about the park and recreation show. And it's like, oh, this is what you do. Just all these little things that, I think for us, as we're 20 plus years into the career, it's not significant because we've overcome it. We've already dealt with it. But I do know, like I've had conversations with younger professionals that are getting their feet wet or want to, and maybe they've actually told someone that, hey, they're going to pursue this. And there's always that like, oh, so what are you going to do? Just, play kickball and, run youth baseball. And it's just not ever looked at as respectfully as it probably should be.
Yep.
Knowing the impact, knowing the desires that are there from communities all over the country. So I know that's kind of a unique answer, or maybe it's not even controllable, but that would be something that would be really impactful if there was ever a way to kind of eliminate some of those thoughts that people have when they first hear that.
The stigma. And we in our staff training, we have this conversation about, whatever it is I go and address in addition to what they're doing and talking about on the day to day. And one of the big pieces is where I came from. I started in playground. I started in camp. It was a lot of people called it playground back in the day, right? And that's that's such a weird connotation. Like, what do you mean you work at playground, right? Right. So now, obviously, I think camp is the more traditional or used term. Anyhow, we talked about that, Jay, to your point, and said, that's how I started. I only thought that is what they offered, right? We've had that conversation so many times. And just yesterday, someone stopped me. It's, we're the week before camp. So one of the parents stopped me in the parking lot on my way out, their way in, and said, hey, I just wanted to let you know I finally went out and read up a little bit about what you all do. And I was so impressed by how much you have your hands in. For what they typically know, their children go to our summer camp program and our before and after school program. And up until that moment, that's probably what that individual or a lot of parents or people in the community associate us with. They have no idea how much we have our hands in partnerships we have, whether it's with food shelves or libraries or any of those other entities. That's one of the greatest compliments you could receive is someone that comes. He didn't say you did it well, but to know, just to have an awareness that this community, you're a community hub. What you all do is a community hub. It's not just, singularly dimensional.
When I transferred from coaching to Parks and Rec, my people would ask my dad, how's Shane, what's he doing? I think I've said it on this podcast before. He would say, I think he still coaches, but he just does it for a city. Like, because I was running leagues 100%. And stuff. So it's like, Dad was like, I don't really know what he does. I think he coaches for a city. I don't explain how that works. But, I think in some ways, this Parks and Rec is now an industry, but it used to be like driver's ed. Like teachers would teach, and then in the summer they'd teach driver's ed. Teachers would teach, and in the summers they'd run camp. So they'd be the pool manager at your local pool. And so I think a generation older than us, most of our parents, at least, didn't understand this was a full-time job because it wasn't when they were in school. The pools weren't open year round, right? It was just a summer thing or whatever. And so I think the stigma is starting to get smaller every year, and I think we get better at telling the kids in the schools what this job is. And whether we like it or not, shows like Parks and Rec show, even on the funnier side of it, that this was a year-round thing and not like a part-time thing. But yeah, a day in the life of type documentary to show people what public service looks like, would be pretty cool.
And I would even take it a step further and be like a week in the life, because not every day is the same.
Totally different.
No, every day
Even
is
when
different.
like you think every day might be planned out a certain way, like everything can be flipped upside down. So it shows that adaptability and how we can really handle anything.
Or like the first 48 hours, which is a crime documentary. So me relaying that to Parks and Rec is hilarious. But 48 hours before an event, or show what it's like to run an event all the way through from start to finish.
Sure.
I think people would be fascinated by the amount of time and staff and what we're doing in the mornings and afternoons and evenings and overnights and everything else. So I thought y'all would give me a no reservations and Anthony Bourdain eating and walking around some city. Y'all went all serious on me. So that was good. So now we got our guest.
High altitude.
High altitude. I was talking to my guests today, and I was talking about how cool. I asked them for some, fun facts, as y'all probably do as well, so you can build something as an intro. And I love how we just have this great luck, I guess, where you'll have someone on an episode, and then you'll have the next person on, their best friends, or they work together, or there's some sort of link, right? Our guest was born on the Great Lakes Naval Base. They're a Navy kid.
No way.
Wow.
How cool is that? And they were saying that no one has ever talked to them ever about the Great Lakes Naval Base. And I
really
sent
neat.
them the last couple of podcasts. And so they listened to that podcast. There'll be some great things to talk about there. But Navy brat, spent most of their life in San Diego, I believe, but was born on the Great Lakes Naval Base.
That's really cool.
Isn't it? Urban planning and product design is what they studied in college. In college, they walked onto the rowing team and made the team, and actually met their wife there. When they got married, they did something cool. I could see Jay doing it. I can't see myself doing it at all. I don't know if Tom could do it either. Their honeymoon, Jay, tell me if you could do this. 1 year backpacking. That was their honeymoon.
Oh, no.
Backpacked for a year.
Not a full year, but definitely at least a month.
Okay, you could do a month. Yeah, Jay, Tom, I was like,
maybe an hour.
backpack to the airport so we can fly to Disney. That's funny. They live in Denver now, and they're an avid boondocker or overlander. I think that's the term most people would be familiar with. They have a van that they live in, camp out of. Super active. Any thoughts so far? I don't think y'all are going to know this person, but you'll know. I think you'll know of them. Okay. I don't know if y'all have met them though.
I love how you're like, any thoughts? You don't
think you're going to.
Well, maybe. I don't know who y'all talk to all the time. Y'all may be best freaking friends. They are in the facility building business. In fact, they've built facilities for some of our YPN fam members, including someone on this call. And he's squinting at the screen right now. I've got a couple others, but I just want to get started. So they are the principal and strategy partner of Barker Rinker Seacat architectural firm, better known in our industry as BRS. It's Craig Bouck.
Welcome.
Hey guys.
Craig,
nice
how you doing? And he's building my rec center right now.
Well, I figured it was you that he was building for.
Yeah.
Craig, nice to meet you.
No, he built one in North Carolina at Mecklenburg, BRS.
Okay.
Oh, North Regional.
Northern Regional was the one we did. Exactly.
Yeah. And it's an absolute beautiful complex that was a huge need for that community, and it is constantly, every day, fully packed all hours of the day.
He also built Nate's in East Springs, Celsius Springs.
Yep.
So, and I've toured that facility. It's an incredible facility. Craig, thanks for being on, man. I'm excited.
Hey, thanks for having me. I was a little surprised when you asked. I mean, oftentimes your guests are, part of your
Sure.
tribe. They're Parks and Rec folks. So you're stretching here, bringing in someone from the outside.
We try to get more Parks and Rec adjacent people when we can.
We like to get out of that box.
And I think what you're going to provide will be fascinating.
All right. Well, good. I think I'm looking forward to seeing how we can do it. I was listening to you guys as you started your conversation. You just you hit a couple of triggers, for me, And I appreciate that. You know, I think each one of you said the word impact. I love talking about impact,
Yeah.
you know, because I think that's kind of what we're all seeking, right? Whether that's in our personal careers or whether that's in the work we do, but it's certainly in the legacy we're dreaming of, you know, with what we're doing, you know, generations of kids that turn into family members, you know, and raising families, and then people hopefully as older adults, you know, you hope you can impact them throughout their journey. So, and you said something else too, which I was really interested in, and that's kind of this idea about how do you broaden people's awareness about
Mm.
different life choices, about careers. You know, I like you know, when I meet somebody, you know, and eventually we get around to, you know, how do you spend your time, or, you know, what do you do? I am blown away all the time by meeting people who do spend their time and have careers in things that I never knew existed. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a job,
Yeah.
man. And growing up, you know, I think we all maybe experience this a little bit. You know what's going on based on maybe what your parents did, what your extended family did, what your friends' parents did, and then what's on TV, right? What media you're
Sure.
exposed to. And that's kind of it. And for me, it was like, well, there's the play school jobs. And what I mean by that is, you know, you had your play school characters. There was
Yeah.
a lawyer, there was a construction worker, you know, the
Yeah.
doctor, the
The
policeman, the fireman.
judge. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, I guess I'll do one of those. And I feel like a lot of our education systems are kind of set up that way, right? If you study engineering, you'll be an engineer. If you
Right.
study medicine, you'll be a doctor. And if you don't fit into one of those categories, you're kind of lost because you just don't know the breadth of what opportunities are out there. And what you guys do is, I think, one of those things,
Yeah.
right? And the breadth and depth of it is also something that I feel like we do a poor job of educating kids about. Like, what I mean by that is, I'm an architect, right? I'm in architecture. But let's say you're told as a kid, oh, if you can't draw and if you're not good at math, you can't be in architecture. That is so crazy because when you think about the business of architecture, we need salespeople, we need finance people, we need people who can just do basically all aspects of business, can be a part of any industry you want. And when I watch you guys and listen to what you do, a lot of what you do is managing people. It's managing politics.
Yeah.
It's storytelling. It's managing just schedules, and you know, it's super creative too. I just don't think that people have that opportunity until they run into someone like yourselves and have a role model to say that. And so I have an idea for that later, and it could be one of these things that we do beyond Parks and Rec that was part of your opening question. But we'll get into that later. Let's get to the topics you guys want to talk about.
No, I
Well,
love it.
you
Y'all
know,
can see why
that
I was
was great.
excited to bring Craig on.
Yeah, that was an amazing intro. And Craig, let me start. And I'm sure Shane had something, but I wanted to. You tied a lot of our opening conversation in there, and then what I see behind you, you talked about impact. Not all the time are you going to have a park and rec agency, whatever it may be, have these fascinating and amazing facilities. However, we just talked about it. Jay, you said that that facility that's in North Carolina, Mecklenburg, is constantly being used. It's always packed. So
Yeah.
top notch, not necessarily, just facilities in general could be so impactful in people's lives, a place for them to be. So I see this amazing backdrop behind you, and it looks to be like a nice colorful weight room workout area, and then maybe some turf with some football field lines, so some kind of a training facility. And I talked about how I wish we could be more of, sometimes
Hmm.
more have that privatized feel. And if we're able to bring in a facility like that, what we can do with it, I feel the impact would be endless. So where is that? What's that facility? Can you tell us a little bit about that before we get started? I'm just really curious about what's behind you.
This picture behind me is in Boise, and it's a field house. And what was so interesting about it is that it's for a disabled community. So it's for people that are recovering. You know, they were athletes, and then, you know, they had some situation, something happened to them. This is an opportunity for them to come back and get back up to the athletic talent or pursuit that they want. And so it's got a full array of fitness things, but it's also about building community. And that's really the biggest part of it, is they want athletes who are disabled to have a community where they can build their sort of mental strength, their fortitude, their confidence, all of those things to get back to what they and love to do, which is be outside and participate in activities. So I put it up here for a couple of reasons. One is that I think it's interesting to talk about where facilities are going, and we can talk about that. The second is reputation. And that was part of what you guys talked about too, is sometimes people have maybe a limited view of what Parks and Rec is. And I think that's true of facilities, and I think that's true specifically of community recreation centers. And I'd love to talk about that a little bit. I also put it up because it's a little, there's some hints in here of what Shane is going to do in impacting and bringing opportunities to his community in Pflugerville.
I'm not surprised. It's gorgeous. And the last thought I want to add to that is maybe how I should have probably put this at the beginning, because you put it so well. It's a third space. So you've got your home, you've got your work, but this is a place that people come and they find it as their home away from home, so to speak, a place that they can be themselves, and the opportunity there for the individuals who are using that facility. Talk about impact. There's probably no greater impact than something like that.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. I want to talk about, it's your show, but I love broadening that conversation about impact. And then I like to talk about all the different people that are not using these facilities and why they're not using them, and what we need to do to change that messaging, to broaden that outreach, to change the offerings, and to create spaces that really create that sense of belonging, right? Because you're not going to come unless you feel welcome. And so what does that mean? And what we're seeing back here is certainly going to feel welcome to some, but I would say that if that was all we were doing, we're not doing our job. Right. And I know this is a podcast, so you can't see the picture behind me, but what it is, what it looks like, what we're looking at is a sophisticated sort of weight and training area. And I think that is certainly what some people think about when they think about recreation centers, depending on what part of the country they're in. But what I'd also like to share is if you go on our website and look at some of the pictures of Excelsior Springs and such, where that is just about gathering and being together, and investing as much space in sort of socialization opportunities is just as important as fitness. It's just as important as, aquatics or something like that. So it's not just about the activity that you want to do. It's about the feeling and experience when you're doing those activities. And socialization, we believe, is, I know that sounds sort of technical when I say socialization, but it's also just community building. We as a team probably need to come up with different words than just saying community rec, because that's a loaded word, and people, they come with baggage when they think of that. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's just overused, and so doesn't have that impact that we're seeking. You had Stacy Anaya on a few weeks ago,
and you built Thrive.
Yeah, we worked with her and her team and that community, and one of the very last things they did, once they actually had the facility and really articulated kind of what it is they wanted to do with that, is they renamed it. And they named it Thrive. Why? Because they didn't want the word community in there necessarily, because they didn't want people coming with preconceived notions about what it could be, right? For forever, for the whole duration of the project almost, it was the Louisville Multi-Generational Community Recreation Center at Memorial Park. Oh, that's so exciting, right? That really gets me going. Now it's Thrive. And it's like, okay, I don't know what that is. I want to know more. Oh, it changes my mindset about what I could do there and what expectations are. So I got to get a space for you to talk. So
I love that. Craig, this is great. And I think we should say at this moment, BRS focuses specifically on community facilities. Y'all aren't also going to build a fire station or a sterile building. And I think when someone takes the opportunity to look at y'all's portfolio, you will see what I always say is this whimsical, wonderful portfolio of spaces where life is happening, community is happening, where people are seen and felt and heard. And there's something that has to be sterile about a public safety facility, probably. Like, you can't have rope swings going into court, probably. Maybe we should, but we don't. But you don't work in that world because y'all don't work in those spaces. Y'all work in spaces where people are seen and heard and felt. And I think it's important for the people listening on this call, and Craig and I talked about it ahead of time. At times we have to be the experts in the room, these park and rec professionals, and city employees, city leadership, council, and boards and commissions look at us as the experts. But really, it's this partnership. It's what you did with Stacy to build Thrive. It's what you're doing with me to build the Monarch, and me being able to feel comfortable leaning you and say, Craig, I've built one rec facility in my whole 20-year career. You've built 300. Well, do I really need this? Do I really need sound dampening walls? Do I really need acoustic panels? If I do, let's do it. Let's find the money. If I don't, let's save the money, And so you aren't a park and rec professional, but you are parks and rec adjacent, and you're so pivotal to what we do in our industry. And the amount of success we're going to have or failure will be based on fully committing and trusting our partners like yourself when we're building these projects.
Yeah, no pressure.
Right. Because I can just blame you. Craig told me to do it.
I mean, Craig, you actually bring up a good point. There is a lot of pressure on individuals in your position, because you're not just answering to Shane, Parks and Rec director. You're answering to everybody in that community. And then, of course, specifically those elected officials, your mayors. That can't be an easy task, I could assume.
Well, let's get into that a little bit, because we care a lot about that, because we want to be an authority, right? We have done a lot of these facilities, and we do have a lot of experience that we can draw upon. But the very worst thing that we can do is to say, this is the best practice and this is what you should do. Now, we may come to that, but if we don't actually go through a process where we check that, where we validate that, where we proof it out, then we're just kind of, I don't know, we're just being that sort of bully in the room that sort of says, my way or the highway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I'd rather do is have a process where we come up with a solution that is authentic to the type of building we're building. We're building a community building, right? So that should involve people. It should involve a lot of people. And yeah, there may be some people who don't get to do this every day, and so their skill set is different. So how do we invent an inclusive way where those people can actually contribute and actually change the direction of the experience, the direction of the aesthetic, the direction of the programming? How do we do that, right? Because they already feel at a disadvantage because they don't have the language, they don't have the education, they don't have the experience, whatever it might be. And so that's where it gets really fun, because, and we spend a ton of time trying to do this, because we always say we're building, it's a people-inspired process. And at the end of the day, this building, this place where we gather to do these things, needs to reflect the community that it's in. The very worst thing that we could possibly do is design something that could be picked up and put in another place. And why is that important? Is because we believe, and I'd love to get your opinions, but we think a community recreation center is the most important building that you can build in a community. And here's why. It has the most impact for the longest duration, right? It's the only public building. First, everybody pays for it, and everybody has the opportunity to use this for their entire life, from when they're born until they die. So it has an opportunity for access for their entire generation, and it could be daily, and it's for them for that entire experience. And so it should offer that kind of those programs, those experiences, those memory making opportunities for their entire life. Think about any other project type. Office buildings, no. Schools, super important but limited, right?
Truly public, right? A truly public space. There's not many.
Yeah.
I mean, indoor space, parks, of course.
Yeah.
100%. But think about what indoor space that we invest in as residents and taxpayers has that kind of impact. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So we have a higher degree of obligation to make it seem meaningful and valuable to everybody, whatever age they're in, whatever ability they have, whatever economic situation we're in, whatever culture they're coming to with. How fun is that? I mean, that's the thing that I think people don't appreciate. You mentioned that sometimes being a park and recreation official or involved in that, you might not get the respect, that you deserve, and people don't understand the complexity and impacts you have. In architecture, it's kind of the same thing, and a lot of that is because the kind of facilities that you're seeing behind me and the kind of facilities that you guys have experienced is not universal around the country. I myself grew up in San Diego, and my impression of what a community center was a cinder block gym
Mhm.
and a multipurpose room. And it was bleak. It was, painted that sort of pinky beige color, and it was like a bunker. And it wasn't inspiring in any way. It was absolutely functional, nothing wrong with that. But that was it. Wasn't inclusive of all the different things that you expect in a community. So it was only good for a certain period of time for certain activities. And it was super limited beyond that. And so when I started thinking about working in community centers, I myself had to change my attitude about what was possible because what I knew was real limited. We have a saying that we picked it up from one of your colleagues that says, I don't know what I want what I know. And so if all you know is what I just experienced, you don't value it the way you should. And trying to attract creative talent in architecture to, hey, come on board and join our team and let's do some amazing things for communities. If your experience is a gym and a multipurpose room, I think I want to do something more interesting.
Yeah.
Like creative talents deserve better, something else, I don't know. And so we too, in the design industry, need to do exactly what you guys need to do. And we could benefit from some of the PR stuff you were talking about in broadening people's exposure to what these facilities are and the kind of impact that they can have. Because I do believe that the very best folks that we can recruit for what we do are mission driven, right?
Mission driven. That's a great way to describe Parks and Rec too.
Yeah. It's like we want to make an impact.
Yeah.
And, they chose architecture because that's a great way to do it. Now you have to dial in and figure out what you want to do with that career. What kind of projects, what kind of clients do you want to work with? What kind of situations do you want to put yourself in to do that?
We'll be right back.
Hey, RecLess fans, as we're gearing up for NRPA conference in Orlando this year, we want to highlight Nile and his team at Next Practice Partners for their generous support of our podcast. Next Practice Partners is an industry leader in preparing agencies for what happens next, and we appreciate Nile and his team for being a RecLess shirt sponsor for the second year in a row. If you're interested in purchasing a shirt, please go to recklesspod.com. That is recklesspod.com and order one today. We're doing a limited run and we will have them in Orlando for pickup at our social. More info to come on that soon. So if you want a shirt but you aren't coming to an RPA, there'll be a delivery option as well. But either way, please check out the shirts at recklesspod.com and go follow RecLess Podcast on all your social media if you want to hear up-to-date information on the podcast for NRPA and the things we do beyond. All right, now on with the show.
I want to kind of dive into what you were just talking about with facilities and uniqueness to locations and everything being different based on communities. Yeah. And obviously I'm sure, and constantly attend community engagement sessions to get feedback from the community.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like right now, what are some of the most desired features or amenities versus 10, 20 years ago?
Good question.
Yeah. I don't know if you could point to one trend, for a particular space, and I'll throw you some in terms of that. But I think the way we like to talk about it is what kind of experiences do you want to have, as opposed to what kind of spaces do you want, right? Because then it's much more interesting, right? And you can talk about the way people use facilities differently. So some of the things that I think are let's break it up into the kind of major areas and talk about those, because I think that's interesting. The first would be aquatics. Why start with aquatics? Because it's the most expensive to build, it's the most expensive to maintain, and has the potential to be some of the most inclusive space in terms of what everybody can use it if it's done well. So that's been the case since we started doing this back in 1985. We brought in the very first, indoor leisure pool and really started working through some of the technical issues and things like that around that. So that promise of having a little bit of something for everybody has always been there. So what's changed in the aquatic world? Well, I think a lot of it is people are recognizing that it's so expensive to build these things. It's so difficult sometimes to get the right staffing and the right technical people to sort of manage them. We need to just keep pushing that button about how do we bring more value to this. And so we've been thinking about this in the opposite. Who's not coming into our aquatic environments and why? And so we started asking those questions, and you get all kinds of interesting answers. Well, I don't want to get my hair wet. I don't want, whatever. And a lot of the times it has to do with your familiarity with, especially like lap pools. I mean, they can be intimidating to people because, hey, I didn't grow up as a swimmer. I wasn't on the swim team, all this stuff. That's a different group of people. That's a different friend group. That's a different thing. I'm not, I'll jump in and play around, but I'm not committed to it in a way that I could to raise the utilization and make it more valuable. So we've been thinking a lot about this, and we're saying, what, we need to just talk about this differently. Instead of talking about it as a lap pool for lap swimmers or fitness swimmers, let's talk about it as a liquid gym. And then we can look at all the things that people are doing that enjoy the gym, all the kind of activities that they do there. And maybe we can find ways to do that in water. And in doing so, it gives them another place to do what they love. It gives them another level potentially of difficulty, on a whole other set of skills to sort of to play with. And you're seeing some of this, a lot of creativity in the programming world from Parks and Rec folks. They're bringing in SUPs, for example, in the pools. And so now you're doing yoga, but you're doing it on a
stand-up paddle board.
Stand-up paddle board. And you're like, yoga's hard enough. And now you try to do it where you're not falling in the water, and it's like crazy. And then you look at what people are wearing, right? When they go to the gym, they have their workout gear. But when they went into the pool, you're telling them that they have to put on a bathing suit. Well, a lot of people, that's the deal breaker right there. I'm not putting on a bathing suit. So you say, you know what? Your gym clothes, your Lycra, all the stuff you wear is basically the same thing. Just wear that. That's fine. If that's the barrier, come in with your yoga clothes, stand on this stuff, and let's do it. And like, I can do that. All of a sudden they're doing that. So that's one way to do it, is like, let's think of that. You may have seen the big craze over the last 10 years with American Ninja Warrior, right? And you saw this in playground suppliers coming up and building obstacle courses. And it started as sort of a grassroots stuff. Parents were building obstacle courses in their neighborhoods, and the kids were loving it. And then it sort of found in there because they're watching these TV shows and going, let's do that. And then playground suppliers got on board and started doing that. And then, pool suppliers started saying, hey, started in Europe, we can create obstacle courses too over water. And now it's even more interesting and challenging. And they've got creative ways to keep the operations down by raising and lowering these things. And the important thing there is, now we've got a whole bunch of people who are interested in that sort of activity and interested in the challenge of water. But it's also creating a little bit of spectator fun, right? Because people are enjoying watching this just as much as they are maybe doing it. And so now you got a whole nother vibe going. And it's also difficult, and it's changeable. So it's more durable. So every time you come, it can be different, which is one of the keys to, getting utilization up into space, is how are you keeping it interesting and different? And then one last one, which I think is along this theme of aquatics, is it doesn't have to be expensive, but you can do things like you do in the park and bring them in. Like, for example, we've been experimenting with slack lines. So we stretch a slack line across the pool. And now that's something that is not only difficult to do, but you can change the width of the slack line, you can change the tension, so you can get better and better. It's durable, it's fun to watch, it's simple, and you get a whole nother group in there. So that's a theme. It's like, how do we reimagine spaces that have maybe minimum utilization in certain parts of the day and amp that up? Gymnasium is another one. The gymnasium, as you know, can sit empty for good chunks of the day. So how do we get more people to value this? Well, often there's a whole group of, for example, homeschoolers. Homeschoolers need a place to do activities during the day too. And so invite them during the middle of the day to come in and use those gymnasium spaces. And maybe this is already going on. But one of the ways that you can use this big space, you can introduce some technology. You may be familiar with, there's one system it's called Lou. Are you familiar with these projection systems?
Yeah. Project onto the walls.
It's a video game that is completely mapped to your activity. So you can throw balls against it. You can do, you can play education games. Anything
Y'all can envision tic-tac-toe on the wall, for example, and you throw the ball at this, and then that's the X, and someone else gets the O or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of museums and
Yes.
more privatized like they have those types of features,
Yeah.
right? This is exactly what I was talking about. What can we bring into our facilities?
Right. And it's not expensive because you've already got this giant wall that's just sitting there. It's perfect for throwing things against. And now you just need a user group that can find it, bring them in for summer camps, bring the homeschoolers in on those rainy days, do it, bring them in. All of a sudden you're finding utilization. And so you might be sensing a theme here, and that is that people are talking about their facilities not as these independent spaces, but as Swiss Army knives. And they're trying to figure out how many different ways can we possibly use these spaces that make sense for the kind of space it is. We always say a space can be multi-use, but pretty quickly it can be multi-use less. And that's by trying to do the wrong activity in the wrong space. You still need to have fitness type spaces. You still need to have gathering and meeting and community type spaces, right? Because if you try to do your meeting in the gym, you're going to ruin that experience, which is what you're trying to do. The acoustics will be terrible, right?
Yeah.
You'll ruin the floor by dragging furniture across it. And similarly, try to do your fitness in your community room. It's like, well, there's no mirrors here. There's no sound system here. There's no good air in this space. There's no place to store my equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So there are still types of spaces, but we're trying to increase the utilization of each one. And that theme has manifested itself in dozens of different combinations and permutations. If you go to our website and just click through some sites, you'll start to see some of these things where, aerobics rooms, which used to be isolated, now have big garage doors that open up to the fitness centers. Why? Because when there's not a class in there, we open these doors and now we expand for functional training. For stretching, we have more space within our space to do the things that are in the adjacent area. We start introducing functional fitness equipment into the aerobics room. So not only do they do aerobics and dance and yoga, but they can do HIIT classes and personalized training and small group fitness classes that you see, people really getting excited about doing different kinds of group fitness together. And again, that's going to keep changing. And so the facilities, we call it, they need to be flexible and versatile and adaptable. And if we can find definitions of each space and show how we're defining those, we're going to have not only a higher utilization, but we're going to have longevity for the life of the facility. Well,
Y'all can tell Craig's passionate. If we get Craig talking about Rex, we'll be okay, right?
Yeah.
But
I'm talking too much. You guys.
No, this is great.
No, this is great. Yeah.
We're getting some
you're
great
great.
stuff. So here's my question, Craig, because you are passionate and you pour your heart and soul, everyone can tell that, into every project you're doing.
Yeah.
There has to be times where being a consultant, as passionate and mission driven as yourself and your company is, that you have to be frustrated because I'm thinking we had Ann Beck on, the juggernaut that works for Mansfield Parks and Rec and is one of their driving forces for their gold medal. And congrats to Mansfield for being a gold medal finalist.
Yep.
I was talking to her about their rec center that y'all did some incredible designs for, that I have often teased her that I was going to steal. You said you don't want to steal something. I used to tell her that I was just going to pay y'all to build her rec center in our facility, but it went to a bond and it failed. Now I went to the bond and failed. I think when you talk to Ann, she talks about how it failed because some of the language in the bond language didn't give it the chance to succeed. And she didn't have a lot to do with that. That was just city leadership and what they wanted to make sure the voters saw and felt and voted on. But man, I think as a mission-driven, creative, passionate person, for you to to envision in your head what this facility is going to look like and how it's going to serve that community and then not be allowed to do it has to be terribly frustrating. What project or an idea of a project that got nixed to the budget, or what cool feature do you most wish that you could have just magic noted, just come in with a wand and said, here's the $1 million you need, build this really cool turf wall or whatever it was that you didn't get to build that you really wanted to build for that community?
You'd be surprised, actually, how long it takes to
Yeah.
get a community to move from zero to being accepting, right? And when a bond fails, like it did for Mansfield, it doesn't mean that it was the wrong solution. It just
Right.
means that the community wasn't ready for it yet. And it didn't mean that Anne and the whole group that were working on the messaging there were giving the wrong message. It's just that the community wasn't there.
Yeah.
And the good news is that I can tell you so many different stories where maybe it was 3 times to the ballot, maybe it was 10 years, maybe it was 15 years, maybe it was 20 years. I don't know. Maybe it was less than that. But if 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 the need doesn't go away,
Yeah.
and so it's just a matter of slowly moving the needle. Sometimes it has to be a leadership change within the community. Sometimes it has to be a leadership change in the Parks and Rec group, right?
Mhm.
Because it takes a lot of coalition building and to do it on all areas to make it all aligned to have the public believe that this investment is going to be a good use of their dollars, right? I would just say that, even it's very disappointing when you put all this effort into these designs or these feasibility studies, whatever it is that we're doing to get ready to take it to a bond, and it doesn't pass. But you know what? We just got to look back at ourselves as a team and go, you know what? That's okay. I mean, this is a democratic process. If it didn't fail, then it didn't deserve to be there, right?
Yeah.
So we need to go back and see, what did we miss, right? Who do we not connect with? What value did we not bring to these people? And let's go back and let's figure it out. And it's not an easy process, but it's so rewarding when it does. There's a rec professional who I'd love for you all to meet if you don't know him already. His name is Ken Sherbino. All right, does that name ring a bell with any of
No.
you? Well, he's an amazing leader. He's the park and rec director right now in Grand Junction, Colorado. He's been there for several years. He came from a community called Montrose, Colorado, a smaller western slope Colorado community. That it took, I don't want to exaggerate this, but I want to take it took about, I think it was 4 times before the community moved the needle to be able to support building a community recreation center. And then once they did, it was like, oh, it was like the floodgates opened in terms of really understanding the impact that this could do for the community. And it was amazing. He left that after having that success and moved to Grand Junction, which was in a similar position. They had been zero interest in raising taxes, zero interest in funding anything related to community recreation center. And so he kind of took that on and he said, all right, this is a big challenge, but I had some success. I learned some lessons. I'm patient. And most importantly, I've learned how to build an inclusive team and an inclusive message and do this from the ground up, step by step by step. And so we took about a year and a half or so and did an amazingly inclusive process, very strategically organized by Ken and his team. And that led to finally a successful vote. But it took some really creative work to do it. And it wasn't just creative design. It was more about messaging and trying to figure out and read between the lines of how to get the funding done and how to build support for location. That particular one, just to give you an idea, and he would be someone you might want to consider having on to talk a little bit about how do you build a team, and then how do you change a community in terms of moving from one way they think of Parks and Rec to a new place. But in any case, one of the ways that they funded it was they used a combination of cannabis tax and sales tax, and it was really that blend that got everybody over the line. Because property tax wasn't going to do it. No one was going to approve that. So anyway, but my point is that he persevered. That project is going to be unbelievable. It's under construction right now. It's going to open the fall of next year, and it's just going to be another amazing opportunity to tell a story about how you can have such an impact, but you got to put the work in. You got to be strategic. You got to figure it out. And so I encourage you to do that.
That's cool.
I'm not answering your question. I'm just sort of giving you a
Oh,
different.
no, this is great.
Yeah, I am never happy when the community is denied kind of the opportunity, but it's always a good check to say, okay, all right, what can we learn from this? What do we need to do next time? We're not going to give up. We're gonna retool and figure it out. Another community I'll mention, which again is another one you might want to consider talking about because it's an amazing story of partnership, and that's Hobbs, New Mexico.
I went to college with Michael Hughes, the rec superintendent in Hobbs.
Fantastic. Well, have you had them on your show yet?
No, no.
Okay. Well, anyway, just as a thought, and the reason is because 10 years prior to that planning process starting, we actually were hired to do some concept work and some community work and all that. And that project just hit a wall. It hit a wall because the city manager at the time didn't believe in the operational numbers and didn't believe that the subsidy that was required could be supportive and sustainable. And it wasn't a priority. There was just other things that the city manager felt was important. So the project was moving along and just went. And as long as that city manager was in charge, it just never got raised up. Now the need didn't go away, and when there was a change in the city manager, it emerged like a phoenix from the ashes, so to speak. And immediately they realized that they couldn't do it alone. Just the city couldn't do it alone. And
They did the university as well, and like the county.
Five
Wow.
different groups. It was the city, it was the county, it was the junior college, at a private foundation, and it was a school district. And the way they did it, and this is the part that's so brilliant, is they didn't just say a recreation center. They said, let's get these community leaders together and let's talk about quality of life in this town. And so they'd have breakfast meetings, and all these leaders would get together and they say, what can we do to retain folks, so they don't leave, attract folks, so they believe in our community and respect the people who've been here for so long. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? And they just dreamed and they wondered and they did these things. And out of that process, they realized that a recreation center kind of checked all the boxes for all their different organizations. And then they said, all right, what do we got to do? What do we have to do? And so they took on the responsibility of managing and running a process that included all of their needs and wants and provided the funding that was necessary. They didn't go to a bond. And collectively they raised, it was like $72 million or something like that. And they built just an unbelievable center for a place that had no there. If you talk to the mayor now who's involved, it has been the driver change for their community. And has incredible impact. Another fun story, but it's about partnership and it's about getting that coalition together to do it. Otherwise, it would have been dead.
Craig, I want to ask a question. I want to go back a little bit and tie in a couple of the thoughts that we just discussed. So when you go through, whether it's a comprehensive plan, a master plan, or a plan for a proposal of a center of some sort or a facility, you've got that coalition. That's a huge piece, right? Having people in the core that are buying in, that are pushing the message, and that are pushing it along. When we talk about the community engagement piece of the process, before you go out to bond, one of my first experiences with the community engagement piece when I first got into my position here about 11 years ago, it was the first year, was for a trail study and to reimagine this space that was a right-of-way by a gas and electric company, but it was an old trail system that they wanted to convert to trails, right? And so anyway, the community engagement piece was the standard, come out to the town hall, city hall, put your little Post-its on the board, and we're inviting you to us. Now, granted, I think to me, that all depends on who's getting that notification, who really is really putting out the message to come there. Mm-hmm. But Shane and myself, I can think of two recent examples. Shane had, when they did their plan, I believe it was this idea board, right, that you took out into the community and individuals shared. we've started. I took a little bit from that and some other ideas that we've seen, and we started doing community engagement recently where we would, again, taking it out to the community, but run events, right? So we might have an activity that's already existing, individuals that we know are obviously somewhat engaged in the community. And then we would, maybe throw in some bounce houses or some pizza and make it an entire event that then, of course, included that community engagement. So, attracting them there a different way. Maybe that's a cheat code. I don't know. Either way, I was hoping without you giving out too many tips and tricks of what you do, would you be willing to share a really unique or effective community engagement strategy that you've seen?
It's a great question, and that's when you ask what's changed in terms of the process. You know, I think this is it. We used to rely on, hey, we're going to have a meeting. Come to the meeting and learn all about it. And certainly you're going to get a certain segment of this, and every project you do, you must run into this. It's dwindling in terms of the breadth and depth of the people that you can attract. I don't have any secret sauce. I will say that I think the ones the processes that I've seen that have been most successful are almost like a political campaign. And what I mean by that is you have to take it to the people. So your suggestion of going to these pop-up events, where you bring the trailer like Shane did, or you go to the festival, that's certainly important because you're going to them. You can't expect them to come to you. So that's fundamental now. But I think even more importantly, it's going to be creating that group of people that are going to then, it's like a fractal thing, right? If you can build your team of people who are going to be your messengers, give them the tools, education, and information so that they can be authorities to answer questions authentically and consistently. They're the ones that are going to go and talk to those community members because they trust them. They'll talk to those neighbors. They'll talk to those organizations that they belong to. They are the leaders in that community, and they'll be trusted in that way. And that might sound like a non-answer. It's like, well, just build a team of people to be your army of information disseminators. But it's true because people don't trust unless they get from a source that they know. And there's so many different diverse groups, it's impossible to think that that's going to be a single person. So you need to find out what those groups are, find a spokesperson that's trusted in there, and engage them in a way that's most meaningful for them, in addition to going to them.
You mentioned impact, and it's really easy for us, like in our profession, to gather data of use and stories and experiences. But obviously, when that is all taking place, you're not involved with the project anymore. So I'm curious, do you ever go back to the municipalities you've worked with to try to gather some of that information so that you could potentially use it for future projects, or just have it in your back pocket to be able to share when you are approached by an organization or a municipality? Because obviously, I can tell you all day the impact that North Regional has had on the greater North region of Mecklenburg County, because I live here and I have friends that use it. I've been there and everything that goes along with that. But you're not here and you're not seeing that now because the project's been done for 2.5, 3 years. So I'm just curious on, do you ever go back and talk to the municipalities on that to really get more information on what it's been like since it's opened 1 year, 2 year, 3 years ago?
I'm glad you asked that because that's one of our favorite things to do. When Shane texted me yesterday and said, "Oh, are you ready?" He very limited conversation, by the way, as to what.
I'm the worst prepper.
Probably zero prep.
But he did say, "Oh, and by the way, you need to have 3 ideas about how you live your life."
We haven't even gotten to those yet.
Well, I'm gonna help you out and tie one in because it got me thinking about that question he asked, and I think it directly applies to what you're asking here, and that is that one of the things that I think about all the time, and we talk about with our team, is, guys, we got to make some new mistakes.
That goes off your janitorial session. that Jay for a couple years was super popular at NRPA, what the janitors told them, where they'd gone back and learned about the buildings they built, not from the people using it, but the people
Yeah.
having to maintain it and manage it and clean it,
Which is a great
Yeah.
concept.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
we called it a custodian's tale.
That's right.
And it started actually, and this is from my training, when I was in architecture school, graduate school, it was sort of like that movie Paper Chase. Did you remember that? That was law school, but they get him in a room and they say, all right, look left, look right, only one of you is going to be here at the end. It wasn't quite like that, but we were kind of expecting that kind of conversation, like, oh, the dean got up and, we're all in the room and he's, this is what you should expect. And he got up and he said, I've got one thing that I want you to think about as you spend your 3 years here, doing this work. He says, architects should think like custodians. And he stopped and everyone looked at us like, I'm paying for this? Like, this is it? And then he elaborated. He said, because here's the thing about it. Custodians know absolutely everything about your building. They know the materials. They know every joint, right? Because they're taking care of it. They know what holds up, what doesn't. They know what gets used, what doesn't. They know what ages well, what doesn't. They know everything about your building. And so if you can adopt an attitude of a learner, we call it innovation and evolution. We're going to innovate, but then we're going to go back and see if it worked so that we can evolve that idea, right? If we can think like custodians in terms of the way that we take care in putting things together, but then go back and see if it actually performed the way we imagined, then we can move forward. So that was one of our things is, our whole idea was, we need to make some new mistakes. We need to learn, and here's the other part of it is we need to know more than just what we see. What I mean by that is what leads to kind of another one of these ideas, which is, and I learned this from my kids. My kids all went to this elementary school that was based on this thing called experiential learning. And what that meant is that they would take all the subjects that they had to learn, but they put it in real life context. It's kind of under a theme, if you will. And one of the things that they taught them to do, especially if they're trying something new and maybe they thought it was one way, but it was another, they said, instead of just jumping in with what you think is the answer or jumping in and criticizing something because it's not what you would expect, back up and say, I notice and I wonder. And that's something that we do all the time, right? We see something, we think it's like, for example, when I'm touring a recreation center, whether it's one we did or somebody else's, that somebody else did, and I see something that seems like, I don't know why they did that, that's a little odd. Instead of criticizing it right away or saying, oh, I would have done this differently, pause and say, I noticed this is here. I wonder. And so then you can engage with the people that take care of it or the people that operate it or whatever and say, tell me more. Tell me why this is the way it is. What's a little bit about the history about this choice? And in doing so, you get a lot of depth and you build empathy, right? Because once you understand more, you're like, oh yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me now. And then that was a really good practical solution given the resources and time and inputs and politics and everything else that was going on at the time. Awesome. Now I've learned something. And so, yes, to get back to your question, we do it in a couple of ways. We're constantly touring our own centers. And the reason we visit other people's centers too, of course, we always learn, but we really pay attention to ours because we know some of that background and history. We know that intentionality. We can teach that intentionality to our staff and say, this is the problem we were trying to solve. Here's how we did it. Here's the outcomes that we've learned. What do you think? And then we say, well, what can we do to make it even better? What's 2.0 look like for this? So we run a program where we invite park and rec professionals into this journey with us to look at old facilities and new facilities and tour them with us, talk about the planning piece, talk about the management piece, and then they can form their own opinions about how, and take those lessons away. It's called Rec Camp.
Yeah.
It's an annual conference that you may have heard of it. I don't know.
Yep.
So you might be
It's great.
Well, yeah, you were there with a colleague of mine when I was with Mecklenburg, and were texting me because Jeff was there.
Oh yeah,
That's right. And I've sent staff to it almost every year. It's rec camp's great.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of accountability, right? I mean, we're coming back, and some of these facilities are quite old, right? And so you can see, and there are going to be pieces of this that haven't performed as we intended, and we share that. We say, here's what we're trying to do. This is what we did. Here's what we learned. Here's what we're doing now. Or maybe it's successful, and you say you can rely on this solution because it's tested and it's good. So that's one way. Another way that we do it is we have we've invented a benchmarking network. And so what we do is every year, and not all of our facilities participate, but we've got about, I think it's 18 facilities right now in 7 states, 1.6 million square feet of facilities. And what we do is we work with them every year and collect all of their operating data. And then we truth it, meaning that apples are apples. Apples aren't oranges, because everybody does their accounting a little bit differently. Everybody, has different ways of running their budgets, but we work and we get them all equal. And then we share with that network what's working and what's not working, right? And within that, because we design the facilities, so we understand what the objectives were, what the aims were in terms of participation, in terms of cost recovery, in terms of energy use, right? All these sort of objective metrics. And then we use that as a launching ground to talk about subjective things, quality of experience, different kinds of programming, participation. How do we get more participation? What are some things? And then people network with each other and say, oh, I see you're doing this. Can I learn from you about that? Can you share some of that information with me? I'm really interested in achieving some of the things that you're doing. Or somebody might say, I'm struggling. We have these goals. We're not meeting those goals. Here's what we're doing. What do people think? And so that's a really powerful way for us to learn. We take that information and then we go back and say, all right, what can we do from a design point of view to impact their aims and to achieve their aims in a better way? And we can totally affect staffing levels, energy use, all these things are things that we can actually change within the design. And so it's evolutionary in that way. Did that kind of answer your question, Jay?
Yeah, that's really neat.
All right. Well, we're into rapid fire, Craig.
Okay.
We're into the rapid fire section. And I think it would be tough to separate. What's that phrase? Take the baby from the bathwater, whatever. I think it'd be tough to separate you from design. I think you're passionate about design and the impact that design and architecture and building something has on the community you serve. But let's say it wasn't a job option. Let's say you couldn't do design, architectural, you couldn't build anything. What would Craig be doing? What would be your job?
Oh my gosh. I might not be in architecture, but I would definitely be some sort of tinkerer.
Yeah.
I just love designing stuff and building things. Now, my family will tell you most of the stuff I spend my time on is completely useless. It's like, we don't need that, Dad. And I'm like, yeah, but an air-powered marshmallow gun, wouldn't that be cool? Let's do it. Or like my wife and I have beach cruiser bikes, which we love to just cruise and go to dinner and just whatever. And I was like, honey, let's this e-bike thing is really fun. She's like, oh, we don't need e-bikes, we're good, it's no big deal. But I converted them to e-bikes. So now we have e-cruiser bikes. Do we need them? Absolutely not. Is it so much fun? 100% fun. So I just love having little challenges. And here's the other thing is I love the work we do because we get to have this broader impact. And I like to think that what we do is going to have a lasting effect on a lot of people, which we as an organization are really proud of. But as you mentioned, or earlier in our conversation, sometimes that takes a while. It's like years sometimes before you get from, hey, we have this crazy idea. And then let's open the doors and enjoy it, And so it's important for me to have things that I can do that I can get done without a committee and just I get to make all the silly decisions myself, and then I get to be absolutely responsible for the screw up or the success of its thing. And so if I had to do something else, I would find a career like that where I
You'd be an
could
inventor of
I'd be an
something.
inventor. I would just love problem solving, doing these little things, and they probably wouldn't be very practical.
Tom, what's Beauty and the Beast? What's her dad?
He's
Maurice?
an inventor. What's his
Yeah,
name? Is that what you're asking
Maurice.
me? Yes,
Yeah,
Maurice.
Craig would be
You know,
Maurice, the guy in the basement
that's
inventing wood
Oh,
chopping machines or
probably.
that's
whatever.
Oh
that's
my
really
gosh,
funny.
just
That's funny.
silliness. Yeah, Rube
You,
Goldberg for sure.
yes, well, that's the part of the show that we're at, a little silliness, and it's funny. You had talked about that, and it sounds like if we were to give you, if you haven't done it, the Working Genius assessment, I would assume Inventor and Wanderer are probably some of your
Yeah,
top four, if not top
absolutely.
two. And this is just a really weird side note, but if you have kids that are of my age who are 5 and 3, we were watching or go through phases of watching different shows in Sesame Street, which has been around forever. But a more recent episode, and Jay, this might relate to you a little bit. Haley Steinfeld, who is now Josh Allen's wife, I first learned about Haley Steinfeld on Sesame Street, and she sang this song called I Wonder What If Let's Try. And it's a really great lesson. And for anybody who has kids that are in my bracket, you've probably heard this song before. It reminds me a lot of what you've been saying, Craig, recently about the job that, about what you're doing and asking those questions and, taking a chance to maybe fail a little bit more to succeed. And I really love the message. But anyway, that was an aside. It just made me think of everything you've been talking about. My question for you is there a state that you haven't worked in that you'd like to do some, and maybe you've worked in all 50, but is there a state that you haven't really dabbled in?
Well, I believe we have projects in 40 states, so there's a
Okay.
lot of opportunity still. I would say that if there's an area of the country that I personally haven't spent as much time as I want to spend and would like to spend, and a project would be a great opportunity to do that, it's probably going to be the Southeast. Just more projects down there would be really interesting. And I think that that's an area that really could use, some innovative new
Mhm.
kind of centers like this. I think the benefit would be terrific. I know there's a lot of hurdles necessarily culturally and everything else to get there. But it's an underserved area in terms of what we do. And I would love to make an impact down there.
40 states, but you've actually done MWR bases as well, right?
True. That's a really good point. We have worked in a couple Army bases over in Germany and the Netherlands,
Oh, wow.
and that
That's
was
cool.
that's another fun story about a different user group and really opened our eyes to what community means for that soldiers and their families. It was fascinating to work over there.
All right, Jay.
I'm gonna go kind of the opposite of what Tom asked is if you could go to any state tomorrow for a project that you have been previously involved in, what would you want to go see? Like, is there a favorite project that you want to go visit tomorrow?
Oh, like picking your
Yeah.
favorite
That's
kid.
that's gotta be you gotta be careful with that one,
Oh,
Craig.
yeah. Let's hear it, Greg. Let's hear
I want to know.
Oh, well, I'm never going to pick a favorite because each one has such a fun story to tell, right?
Yeah.
And I love telling those stories. I will say though that I am going to go out in a couple weeks for a grand opening for a project that we're super excited about. It's for the Cosumnes Utility District. It's out in just south of Sacramento, so it's out in California, and it's a project that has four gyms and some fitness stuff. And the reason I'm excited about this project is because it has just gone through so many evolutionary changes during its design, and it is at a place right now where it's going to take this utility district. They do recreation and fire are the things they're responsible for.
Wow.
But this is going to be sort of a brand refresh for them in terms of who they want to be as an organization, how they want to serve their community. And it's also going to be a refresh for an important park because it's on a corner of a park that they've got out there. And I'm just really excited to see how the community sort of embraces this new definition of who they are and what they're doing. And that's my recent, that's the thing I'm thinking about right now. Of course, Shane's project is going to be such a game changer. Anytime that we can put recreation in the heart of placemaking, and redefine its importance, because Shane's project says, Parks and Rec is just as important as a city hall. It's just as important as, the town.
Retail and yeah.
When you define the center of this new center of the community, Park and Rec is got a front and center position, and I love that. So that might be my next most favorite one there, Shane.
I love that.
On that story and getting more people excited about redefining the way they think about it.
We're trying to do some cool stuff too. So I won't ask you for your favorite spot. I won't ask you to pick your favorite child, but I bet when you've gone into these communities, you have found a spot to eat at that years later you've thought, man, I hope I get to go back and visit blank because then I can go to that Greasy Spoon or that little Italian restaurant or hit. What is your favorite spot you've eaten at in one of these little communities you've worked at over the years that you've thought about since and been like, man, if I ever go back to the blank rec center, I'm going to hit up that gelato place or whatever it was?
Oh, so many random places. Two that I'll give you.
Okay.
One is it's funny. It's in Sacramento, California. And since we've been doing work in that area, we've had the opportunity to go in and out of there. And so when we get a chance, we always stop at this place. And the reason it's special to me is because this particular place was a place that my wife and her family would go to when they were kids. Right.
Wow.
And so when we started going to Sacramento, it was like, hey, you need to go check this place out. And it's called Vic's. And what it is an ice cream parlor that has sandwiches. And the kind of sandwiches you get there are like hot dog sandwiches with
Really?
chips or liverwurst sandwiches. It's like old school, like I could make this in my kitchen myself stuff. But it's so fun to go get a hot dog sandwich and a milkshake and be in this embedded little ice cream shop in the middle of a little neighborhood. And it's just a wonderful little experience. And, you're not going to find it on the Michelin star kind of place, but it's beloved by, it's the kind of place where she would tell me that you bring your report card in, and if you had an A, you got a free ice cream.
That's right. One of those. Yeah.
So I love those kind of places, by the way. Food is important, but I love the story and the little experience and just having some fun like that.
Well, we've hit our time, Craig. We say this all the time. We could have gone for not hours, days with you. I think this was incredible.
Well, thank you. I hope I didn't take too much airtime.
No, this was great.
I love learning from you guys too. So thank you for your contribution and what you do every week for the industry and groups like ours.
How do people find you if they need to reach out to y'all? Just reach out to BRS.
Yeah, just Barker Rinker CCAT architecture, just community center architecture in the Google. That always works.
Okay.
They can also reach out to you guys, Shane, where to find me.
That's right. Yeah, I can find you for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Shane doesn't get back to people that readily available. I wouldn't recommend that, to be honest. Right. So you don't want to be associated. Craig, it was really a pleasure to meet you and learn about you. This is a really great opportunity for all of us, and we appreciate what you shared.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, guys. Keep doing your good work.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
All right. See ya.
Bye, Craig.
Craig took us to church today, folks. He can, you know what's crazy? Like, I think at times, all of us probably have experienced, whether you ask it or someone asks you, why do you need a consultant for something? Why do you need someone, a third party? Why do you need someone to help you with this blank, whether it's landscape architecture or building a building, or why do you want to be so focused that the person you're building, why can't you just choose anyone can build a rec center, right? It's just 4 walls and a gym. Craig right there, I think, showed you exactly why you find someone that intentionality matters, mission-driven organization matters, because the difference in the facility, you get is going to be built in the layers of the amount they care about you, your community, hitting the mark for the people that are going to be working out of that space for the next 20 to 50 years. I've always been impressed. Every time I talk with Craig, I enjoy every conversation I have with him. I was glad to get to expose everyone else to it a little bit because I think he's brilliant.
I think you want your consultant or whoever it is that you're working with in that capacity to have some connection and some passion to what you're doing. You also kind of want to know them, right? You want to get to know them. It just doesn't feel natural when you're bringing someone in and then you don't really feel like you know, and they're going and trying to sell something to your community or whoever it is, right? And so there's a value that goes along with, and I think the price tag sometimes reflects it too, but there's definitely a value that goes along with having park and rec specialized consultants as opposed to the consultant that does everything, right? This consultant works on firehouse projects. This consultant works on whatever. And you could tell when you talk to someone like Craig that the stories that he's a storyteller, right? But the passion is there.
Yeah, he's the person you want in front of a council meeting. And Jay, I don't know what you think, but I believe you're definitely going to get what you pay for. You could build a cheaper rec center in every scenario than the one Craig's team built you. I guarantee, but I don't think it would be as good.
Yeah, and I think that's, when you have as much experience as they bring to the table and are going to steer you in the direction of potentially long-term, like saving you money, because you may say, well, hey, let's do it this way, or let's move this facility or this amenity to this part of the facility. And they're going to say, well, if you do that, it's going to cause this to happen, or it's going to have, it's going to impact your HVAC unit or whatever it might be. Like that's what you're paying for in some capacity, because they know that, because this is what they solely do. They don't build, strip malls and build office buildings. It's solely recreation centers.
Yeah, and it's to that point too. And for selling that upfront cost that might be a little higher. And I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm just saying from a perspective of those going out to their elected officials and trying to say, hey, you asked us to get a couple quotes, but this one's here and this one's there.
Yeah.
There's certainly a difference in an expertise level when you provide a number or a proposal from someone that's all they do, right? That's rare too, right? It's not, if you're in your local area, you're not going to find that. You sometimes have to go outside.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, depending on where you are. I think you're absolutely right. And Craig and his team's great. And if you are building a rec center and you're at least interested in speccing out some, I think, high-end rec center, very intentional folks, I think you should definitely consider BRS as one of the group. There's others out there for sure, but I've enjoyed my time with Craig and enjoyed this episode, guys. We're back, season 5.
Yes, sir.
All right. Until next time, see ya.
See you guys.
All right. Bye, everyone.
This episode of RecLess wouldn't have been possible without the support of our agencies and our better halves, Melissa Salatino, Lindsay Tryon, and our executive producer, Hannah Mize. We also want to thank our director of hashtags and swag, Rooney Taylor, and our team of junior producers, Luke, James, Elizabeth, Grant, and Harper. Stay up to date on all things RecLess by following all of our social media, and like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast to ensure you don't miss an episode. See you next time on RecLess.